A perfect line of sunlight pierces the heart of Stonehenge at dawn. This video explores the alignment paradox, the profound mystery of why ancient monuments mirror the night sky. By the end, you will see these silent stones not as ruins, but as grand celestial clocks, their secrets written in the stars. How could cultures without modern tools achieve such impossible precision? What did they know about the cosmos that we have forgotten? What does it feel like to stand in a place built as a bridge between earth and heaven? That moment at Stonehenge is not a coincidence, but a message. It is a deliberate, calculated act of architecture, one repeated across the globe in places separated by oceans and centuries. This presents us with the core enigma, the very heart of our mystery. An architect today with laser levels, satellite data, and computer models would find the task of aligning a massive structure to a single star at its rising point a significant challenge. Yet, ancient builders accomplished this with what we perceive as primitive tools. This is the alignment paradox. It is the jarring coexistence of two undeniable truths. First, the astronomical precision embedded in these monuments is real and measurable. Second, the cultures that built them are traditionally thought to have possessed only basic technology. How do we reconcile these facts? How could societies, often without formal writing systems or complex mathematics, orchestrate stone to mirror the heavens with such breathtaking accuracy? This question does more than puzzle engineers. It challenges our entire understanding of history's timeline. To begin unraveling this, we must step into the field of archaeoastronomy. This is simply the study of how people in the past understood the phenomena in the sky, how they used this knowledge, and what role the sky played in their cultures. It is not about proving ancient astronauts or lost super technologies. It is about listening to the stones. These monuments are not just tombs or temples. They are permanent records of observation. They are concrete expressions of a cosmic worldview where earth and sky were seen as two halves of a single, living whole. The paradox forces us to reconsider the intellectual and spiritual landscape of these builders. We must move beyond seeing them as primitive and instead see them as profoundly attentive. Their greatest tool was not made of metal, but of patience, generations of it, watching the slow dance of the stars and learning its rhythm by heart. This cosmic worldview was not an abstract theory, it was the very air they breathed. Picture a quiet scriptorium, lit by a single candle, where a monk carefully inks a diagram of the universe onto vellum. At the center sits the earth, stable and still. Encircling it are perfect crystalline spheres, one for the moon, another for the sun, then each planet, all nestled within the final sphere of the fixed stars. This is the Ptolemaic model, a vision of profound and beautiful order. But for that medieval scholar, this was far more than a map of objects in space. It was a map of meaning. Each celestial sphere was guided by an intelligence, its perfect circular motion creating a divine music, the harmony of the spheres that resonated through all creation. In this worldview, the universe was a single, interconnected organism. What happened in the heavens directly influenced the earthly realm, the cycles of seasons, the growth of crops, even the fate of kingdoms. This is the great chain of being, a hierarchy stretching from God down through angels, stars, humans, animals, and plants, all linked in a sacred web of influence. So when a king ordered a cathedral built, or a community raised a stone circle, they were not merely constructing a shelter, they were attempting a sacred act of resonance. They were building a microcosm, a small, perfect model of the macrocosmic universe. By aligning its walls to the solstice sun or its axis to a bright star, they were tuning their building, literally and spiritually, to the celestial harmony. They believed this alignment would allow heavenly virtue to flow down into the earthly structure, blessing those within. This explains the powerful motivation behind the precision we see. It was not a technical exercise, it was a spiritual imperative. The architecture was a prayer made of stone, a permanent plea for alignment with the cosmic order. To build without this connection would be to create something hollow, something disconnected from the divine symphony of creation. This profound desire to mirror the heavens in stone provides the why. But it still leaves us with the staggering how. How did they translate this grand cosmic vision into such exact earthly coordinates? The answer lies not in complex machinery, but in a tool of sublime simplicity, one that turned the entire sky into a measurable instrument. The most powerful instrument they possessed was the sky itself. To understand their methods, we must abandon our modern tools and return to the fundamentals of observation. Before telescopes and satellites, the human eye and the natural horizon were the primary instruments for mapping the heavens. Ancient astronomers were not casual stargazers, they were meticulous, lifelong observers. Their work was built on a foundation of profound patience, tracking the cyclical paths of the sun, moon, and planets against a fixed canvas of distant hills, mountain peaks, or specially placed marker stones. Imagine watching the same notch in a faraway ridge, year after year, decade after decade. You would notice that the point where the sun rises on the horizon slides slowly north and south with the seasons. The summer solstice sunrise would always appear at its northernmost point, the winter solstice at its southernmost. By noting where a particularly bright star first peaked over that horizon line, they could establish extremely accurate, permanent seasonal markers. This was a calendar written not on parchment but on the land itself. A powerful example of this is found at the Callanish Stones on the Isle of Lewis in Scotland. This eerie, cross-shaped arrangement of monoliths does more than just point to the sun. Its central avenue and surrounding circle are precisely aligned to frame the dramatic rising of the moon at its major standstill, an event that occurs only once every 18.6 years. To encode that long-term cycle into architecture means knowledge was not just observed by one person, but carefully preserved and passed down through generations. It represents a living tradition of celestial observation, a chain of wisdom connecting grandparents to grandchildren, all focused on the same point on the horizon. The precision achieved through this simple method of horizon observation is a staggering testament to human ingenuity. It demonstrates that profound understanding of the cosmos does not necessarily require advanced technology in our modern sense. It requires something else entirely: sustained attention and a deep cultural commitment to reading the language of the sky. This knowledge of angles and cycles, however, needed to be translated from the landscape to the construction site. To move from observing a star's rising point to actually placing a multi-ton stone in the exact correct spot required another fundamental tool, one born from the earth: geometry. Geometry was the silent language that turned observation into architecture. To translate a star's position on the horizon into the placement of a 20-ton stone, ancient engineers needed a practical, earthly system of measurement and design. They found it in sacred geometry. This was not the abstract math of a classroom, but a living, practical art, rooted in the belief that certain shapes and proportions held divine power, reflecting the very fabric of the cosmos. Their tools were elegantly simple: a length of rope, a set of wooden stakes, a straight pole known as a gnomon to cast a shadow. With these, they could create perfect circles, right angles, and complex alignments across vast distances. By driving a central stake and using a rope as a radius, they could lay out a perfect stone circle. By observing the shadow path of the gnomon over a year, they could map the sun's solstice extremes. The principles we later formalized as the Pythagorean theorem, the understanding of triangles, and the harmonic ratios like the golden mean, were likely discovered and applied through this hands-on process of rope and stake geometry. For these builders, a triangle was not just a shape, it was a sacred symbol of stability, a representation of the relationship between earth, sky, and the human spirit. When they incorporated these perfect ratios into a temple's floor plan or a pyramid's slope, they were not merely seeking beauty. They believed they were embedding the immutable laws of the universe into stone, creating a structure that would resonate with cosmic order. This intellectual ambition reaches a breathtaking scale at the Great Pyramid of Giza. Researchers have long noted that its proportions seem to encode mathematical constants with startling accuracy. The ratio of its perimeter to its height approximates 2 times pi, the fundamental constant of a circle. Some analyses suggest its dimensions might even relate to the Earth's own measurements, as if the pyramid was conceived as a scale model of the planet itself. Whether by deliberate intent or a profound intuitive grasp of geometric harmony, the result is a structure that feels mathematically inevitable. This application of sacred geometry solves a key part of the alignment paradox. It shows us the tangible mechanism, the earthly blueprint, that allowed a grand celestial idea to become a grounded, physical reality. The star's path was observed on the horizon, its angle understood, and then that celestial angle was replicated on the ground using ropes and right triangles, creating a permanent echo of the sky. This reveals a culture engaged in a deep, intellectual partnership with the natural world, seeing numbers and shapes not as human inventions, but as divine truths waiting to be discovered and mirrored. With this geometric bridge between heaven and earth firmly built, we can finally approach the most iconic aligned structure of all, to see how all these threads, observation, cosmology, and geometry, were woven into a single, monumental testament. Stonehenge rises from the mist of Salisbury Plain as the ultimate expression of the paradox. Its iconic ring of sarsen stones, capped by massive lintels, is far more than a mysterious circle. It is a sophisticated astronomical instrument, permanently set to capture one specific moment, the dawn of the summer solstice. Each year, as the sun reaches its northernmost point, its first light aligns with surgical precision. It slices through a narrow gap between the stones, strikes the heel stone positioned outside the circle, and floods the central altar with a beam of golden light. This event is too exact, too repeatable to be anything but intentional. For the people who built it, this alignment was a cosmic confirmation, a sign that the world was in balance and the sun's life-giving power was at its peak. This knowledge was not merely symbolic, it was essential for survival, marking the time for planting, for harvest, and for the great communal gatherings that bound society together. But the solar alignment is just the beginning of the story. The monument's complexity suggests a deeper layer of celestial wisdom. The circle of 56 so-called Aubrey Holes that ring the site have long puzzled archaeologists. Some researchers propose these pits were not just for posts or ceremonies, but part of a long count calendar. By moving markers from hole to hole, priests or astronomers could have tracked the much longer, more complex cycle of the moon, potentially predicting dramatic events like lunar eclipses. This transforms our view of Stonehenge from a simple solar calendar into a multidimensional observatory, capable of modeling the intricate dance between the sun and the moon. Consider the sheer physical effort this required. The smaller blue stones were transported over 200 miles from the Preseli Hills in Wales, an unimaginable journey in the Neolithic era. The giant sarsens were dragged from quarries 20 miles away. This was a project that demanded the labor of generations, a society's entire surplus of energy and resources devoted to raising these stones with celestial accuracy. That is the profound message of Stonehenge. It tells us in the language of megaliths that connecting their earthly existence to the rhythm of the cosmos was the most important work they could do. They anchored their world to the sky, believing that the stability of the heavens would ensure stability on earth. Yet, as we have seen, this practice was not unique to the windswept plains of Britain. To understand just how universal this celestial impulse was, we must look to another continent, to a culture that expressed the same cosmic yearning in a completely different architectural language, yet arrived at a similar, stunning precision. Across the sea, under the vast and starry desert sky, another civilization wrote its cosmic ambition in stone on a scale that still defies belief. The three great pyramids of Giza stand in a silent, diagonal row that has whispered a secret to observers for centuries. Their layout, when viewed from above, forms a pattern that is hauntingly familiar. It mirrors, with an uncanny precision, the three bright stars that form the belt of the constellation Orion. This observation forms the core of the Orion correlation theory, a compelling idea that suggests these tombs were not just monuments to pharaohs, but a vast celestial map permanently etched into the sands of Egypt. In this proposed mirror of the heavens, the winding course of the Nile River itself is seen as the earthly counterpart to the great, shimmering band of the Milky Way. For the ancient Egyptians, this connection was not a mere architectural coincidence. It was a matter of eternal consequence. Orion was deeply woven into their mythology, intimately associated with Osiris, the god of the afterlife, of resurrection, and of the fertile flooding of the Nile that brought life to the land. Osiris was the lord of the dead who granted rebirth, and his soul was believed to reside in those very stars. Therefore, aligning the eternal resting place of a divine king, the pharaoh, with the constellation of Osiris was the ultimate act of spiritual engineering. It was a way to tether the soul of the ruler directly to the mechanism of cosmic rebirth. The pyramid was more than a tomb. It was a launching pad for the spirit, a physical ramp designed to propel the pharaoh's essence from the earthly realm straight into the eternal, undying stars. This transforms our understanding of the pyramid's purpose. The staggering precision of its angles and alignments, which we marvel at for their mathematical brilliance, served a goal that was fundamentally religious and mythological. The alignment was a guarantee, a sacred contract written in stone and stars, ensuring the pharaoh's journey to immortality, and by extension, the continued order and prosperity of the kingdom he left behind. This case study reveals a profound truth. The drive to mirror the heavens in architecture was rarely just about marking the seasons for planting. It was about answering humanity's deepest questions concerning what lies beyond. It was an attempt to conquer death itself by aligning human destiny with the perceived permanence of the stars. This yearning to build a bridge between the mortal and the eternal, to create a doorway to the divine in stone, did not fade with the sands of Egypt. It would be carried forward, transformed, and expressed again centuries later, not in the dry heat of the desert, but in the cool, shadowy naves of a new kind of temple that reached just as desperately for the sky. The pyramid's quest for immortality found a powerful echo in the very heart of medieval Europe. Step inside the cool, echoing vastness of a Gothic cathedral like Chartres. High above, light does not simply enter, it performs. It streams through towering windows of stained glass, transforming the stone floor into a kaleidoscope of celestial color. This was no accident of design. It was the culmination of a 1,000-year tradition, now expressed in a new architectural language. Where ancient cultures built to capture the sun for kings and calendars, the medieval world built to capture it for God. The entire structure was a stone prayer, meticulously aligned on an east-west axis. The altar always faced the east, positioned to be the first point touched by the light of the rising sun. This was a direct and powerful symbol, representing Christ as the light of the world, whose resurrection was heralded by dawn. Every sunrise was a reenactment of that divine promise, and the cathedral was the stage. But the alignment went beyond simple orientation. Specific architectural features were fine-tuned to the sun's precise journey. The famous labyrinth set into the floor of Chartres Cathedral, for instance, is positioned so that on the summer solstice, a single beam of sunlight strikes its center at a specific hour. Certain windows were designed as celestial spotlights to illuminate a particular statue or altar on the feast day of its associated saint. This transformed the building from a static space into a dynamic, living calendar. The sun itself became the sacristan, lighting the sacred narrative of the liturgical year. The theological ambition was even grander. The cathedral was conceived as nothing less than a model of the heavenly Jerusalem, a vision of paradise brought down to earth. Its soaring vaulted ceilings represented the firmament, the very dome of heaven. Its pillars were the trees of life, and its measured geometry reflected the divine order of creation. To stand inside was to stand within a microcosm of a perfectly ordered universe, a universe governed by divine law and illuminated by sacred light. This practice shows a direct, unbroken thread from the stone circles and pyramids. The tools and the gods had changed, but the fundamental human impulse remained identical: to build structures that resonate with the cosmos, to create a sacred space where heaven and earth meet. The cathedral masters understood that this resonance depended on two great celestial bodies, the steady, reliable sun and the mysterious, cyclical moon. Their ancient dance provided the fundamental rhythm for all aligned architecture, a rhythm we must now learn to hear. The sun's predictable journey gave ancient societies their most vital rhythm. To capture that rhythm, they built calendars not of paper but of stone. At Newgrange in Ireland, a massive 5,000-year-old earthen mound contains a secret passage. For just a few minutes at dawn on the winter solstice, a slender beam of sunlight pierces a perfectly positioned roof box above the entrance. It travels down the long, dark corridor to illuminate the central chamber deep within the tomb, a chamber that had lain in darkness for an entire year. This was not merely a light show, it was a profound cosmological event. The shortest day, the deepest dark, was punctured by a spear of light, a promise that the sun was returning and life would begin anew. This solar alignment transformed an abstract astronomical moment into a visceral, communal experience. It made time itself something you could witness and feel in your bones. Across the sea in Egypt, the Temple of Karnak performed a similar function on a colossal scale. Its main axis was aligned so that on the winter solstice, the rising sun would shine directly down the long avenue of sphinxes, through the towering pylons and into the deepest, most sacred sanctuary, illuminating the statue of the god Amun-Ra. In that moment, the divine king, the pharaoh, stood bathed in the light of the reborn sun god, his authority literally and symbolically renewed by the cosmos. These structures served as infallible, permanent calendars. By marking the solstices, the extreme northern and southern points of the sun's travel, and the equinoxes, the 2 days of perfect balance between light and dark, ancient cultures created a stable framework for time. They divided the chaotic flow of days into a predictable, cyclical order. This solar mastery dictated everything: the optimal time to plant seeds as the days grew longer, the time to harvest as they shortened, and the sacred dates for festivals that reinforced community bonds and royal power. The reliable return of the sun countered the fear of chaos, proving that the universe operated by a knowable, celestial law. This long-term, generational observation of the sun represents a sophisticated science of patience. It formed the steady, beating heart of societal rhythm. Yet, if the sun provided the steady heartbeat of the year, the moon introduced a more complex, mysterious pulse, one of ebb and flow, of cycles within cycles that demanded an even deeper kind of attention. The moon introduces a rhythm of profound mystery. Unlike the steady, predictable sun, the moon is a master of subtle change. Its rising and setting points do not simply swing back and forth with the seasons. They slide along the horizon in a slow, complex dance that takes 18.6 years to complete. This long cycle, called the major lunar standstill, sees the moon reach its most extreme northerly and southerly positions only once in a generation. To build a monument that captures this elusive event is an act of faith that spans human lifetimes. It forces us to ask, why would a culture invest such immense effort in a structure whose full meaning only reveals itself every 18 or 19 years? The answer lies in a worldview that saw time as a sacred, multi-layered tapestry. The sun governed the year, the cycle of life and harvest, but the moon governed something deeper, the rhythms of water, of women's cycles, of tides both oceanic and emotional. It was linked to deities of fertility, intuition, and the hidden, shadowed parts of existence. Tracking its complex path was not a practical necessity for agriculture, but a spiritual one for understanding the full spectrum of cosmic influence. We see this ambition etched into the landscape at places like Karnak in Brittany, France. Here, thousands of standing stones are arranged in long, parallel rows that stretch for miles across the countryside. While their exact purpose is debated, many researchers note that the alignments of these massive rows appear to correspond to key lunar rising and setting points, particularly those of the major standstill. The scale is staggering, a project that would have required coordinated labor over centuries. This was not a calendar for planting wheat, it was a cathedral for contemplating time itself. It represents a society thinking in terms of grand, generational cycles, where knowledge was a sacred trust passed from elders to the young, with the completion of the lunar cycle serving as a powerful, unifying moment for the entire community. The effort to pin down the moon's wandering path in permanent stone reveals a breathtaking intellectual ambition. It shows us that these cultures were not just interested in the obvious clock of the sun. They were dedicated students of the entire cosmic order, determined to ritualize and comprehend even its most subtle and inconstant patterns. This drive to map every celestial body naturally extended their gaze beyond the moon, past the wandering planets, and out into the vast, fixed tapestry of the night. While the sun and moon marked the rhythm of time, the fixed stars provided its map. These distant, unchanging points of light offered something different, a promise of permanence in the night sky. For ancient navigators and builders, they were the ultimate reference points. The North Star, Polaris, has served as a steady guide for centuries, but here lies a fascinating twist of cosmic timing. Our planet wobbles very slowly on its axis like a spinning top winding down, a 26,000-year cycle called Procession. This means the star that sits at our celestial North Pole is not fixed for all time. Today it is Polaris, but 4,500 years ago, when the Great Pyramid was being built, the pole star was a different light entirely, a star in the constellation Draco called Theban. This fact ignites a compelling theory. Deep within the Great Pyramid, narrow, mysterious shafts angle upward from the king's chamber. For decades, researchers have proposed that these were not air vents but sighting tunnels deliberately aligned to specific stars. One of these shafts points directly north, and calculations suggest that around 2500 BCE, it would have framed the pole star of that age, Theban. Imagine the symbolic power of that alignment. While the sun set and the moon cycled, this stone channel connected the heart of the pharaoh's tomb directly to the one star that never moved, the anchor of the entire rotating sky. To align with a fixed star was to connect with the eternal, the unchanging realm beyond the cycles of life and death. This stellar connection often tied a monument directly to a culture's creation myth or a supreme deity. In Egypt, the imperishable stars of the northern sky were associated with the eternal afterlife, the destination of a king's soul. By pointing his resting place toward them, the builders were tethering his legacy to the permanent fabric of the cosmos itself. It was a way of saying that his rule and the order he represented was as enduring as the stars. This profound desire leads us to the ultimate question simmering beneath all these alignments. Why go to such impossible lengths? What fundamental human need were these cultures attempting to satisfy by spending generations to make stone mirror sky? The answer may lie not in the stars themselves, but in the deep, psychological landscape of the people who looked up at them. This division between practical purpose and sacred meaning is where modern scholarship meets its own intriguing crossroads. We look at these silent, precise monuments and instinctively ask, what were they for? Was this a farmer's almanac or a priest's temple? The answer, frustratingly and beautifully, is that it was almost certainly both. The alignment served a dual reality, one that our modern minds often struggle to hold together. On one hand, the practical necessity is undeniable. For a society dependent on the land, knowing exactly when to plant and when to harvest was not a matter of convenience, it was a matter of survival. A monument that pinpointed the solstices and equinoxes was the most reliable calendar imaginable, one that could not be lost, burned, or misinterpreted. It anchored the entire community to the rhythm of the seasons. Similarly, for cultures like the Polynesians navigating vast oceans, reading the stars was not spiritual, it was essential. The precise rising points of certain stars over specific island peaks created a celestial map that guided voyages across thousands of miles of open water. In this light, these structures were supremely practical tools, born from careful, repeated observation of the natural world. They were applied science in its most fundamental form. Yet, to reduce them to mere tools feels incomplete, almost disrespectful to the immense effort and artistry involved. Why carve a simple marker stone into a towering, awe-inspiring monolith? Why arrange dozens of massive stones in a perfect circle, rather than a simple line of posts? The scale and permanence suggest a purpose that transcended utility. This is where the sacred interpretation takes root. For many of these cultures, the cosmos was not a dead mechanical clock. It was a living, conscious, divine entity. The sun was not a ball of gas. It was a god, a father, a life-giver whose return from the southern depths each winter needed to be encouraged, celebrated, and ritually ensured. The moon was a goddess governing fertility and the unseen realms. To align a temple to these celestial beings was to open a direct line of communication. It was to build a doorway where divine power could flow into the human world. The monument became a machine for harnessing that power, whether to heal the sick, bless a king, or guarantee the fertility of the earth and the people. So, was Stonehenge a giant calendar or a cathedral? It was a cathedral that functioned as a calendar. The same stone that told you the days were growing longer also served as the altar where you offered thanks for that returning light. The precision of the alignment did not diminish its sacredness, it amplified it. It proved that the ritual was correct, that it was in harmony with the cosmos itself. This synergistic blend is the true heart of the alignment paradox. It shows us a worldview where observing the stars was itself a religious act, and where building in harmony with them was the highest form of both engineering and worship. The practical and the spiritual were not separate categories. They were two sides of the same coin, two languages describing the same profound truth, that human life was intimately, irrevocably woven into the fabric of the universe. This beautiful duality played out in fascinatingly different ways across the ancient world, revealing that while the impulse to build skyward was universal, the specific stories they told with their stones were uniquely their own. The Serpent of Shadow descends the steps of El Castillo at Chichen, Itza, only twice a year. As the sun sets on the spring and autumn equinoxes, the stepped corners of this Mayan pyramid cast a series of triangular shadows down the northern staircase. They merge to form the undulating body of a great feathered serpent, culminating at the stone serpent head at the base. This was no architectural accident, but a choreographed celestial event, a moment where the building itself came alive to enact a sacred myth. For the Maya, this alignment marked the days of perfect balance, a time when the serpent deity Kukulkan was believed to descend from the heavens to bless the earth, connecting the underworld, the earthly realm, and the sky. Their entire cosmology was built on precise cyclical time, tracked with astonishing accuracy through observatories like El Caracol, whose windows align with the extreme positions of Venus. They watched for the moment the sun passed directly overhead at zenith, a day with no shadows which held profound significance in their tropical latitude. Half a world away, under the stark desert sun of the American Southwest, another culture etched its celestial observations into stone. At places like Fajoda, but in Chaco Canyon, the Anasazi, or ancestral Pueblones, engineered a stunning phenomenon. They positioned 3 large stone slabs so that slender daggers of sunlight would pierce the shadows at precisely noon on the summer solstice, one beam perfectly transecting the center of a carved spiral petroglyph. A second dagger would touch a smaller spiral to mark the winter solstice. These sun daggers transformed a rock face into a sophisticated solar calendar, marking the turning points of the year with a silent, dramatic light show that likely guided ceremonial life and agricultural cycles. Meanwhile, on the vast, trackless Pacific, an entirely different relationship with the stars was being lived. Polynesian navigators embarked on voyages across thousands of miles of open ocean without compasses or charts. Their instruments were the stars themselves, memorized in a mental star compass that divided the horizon into houses where specific stars rose and set. They watched the Pleiades cluster to mark the start of the planting season, and they steered by the Southern Cross. But their knowledge went beyond the visual. They learned to read ocean swells, bird flight patterns, and even the color and taste of the water. For them, the sky was not just a clock or a temple. It was a dynamic, living map, and aligning their canoe to its signs was the difference between finding a new island and being lost forever. This global tapestry reveals a beautiful truth. The fundamental human desire to find order and meaning in the heavens was a universal spark, but the specific expression of that spark was shaped by the local environment, mythology, and practical needs of each culture. The Maya, in their dense jungles, built towering pyramids to capture the zenith sun and the path of Venus. The desert-dwelling Anasazi used the interplay of light and shadow on canyon walls. The seafaring Polynesians internalized the star map for navigation. Each culture chose different celestial targets, the Pleiades, the solstice sun, the equinox shadow, and invented unique architectural or intellectual solutions to connect with them. This rich variation does not weaken the alignment paradox, it deepens it. It shows that this was not a single, lost knowledge passed from one master civilization to another. It was a flowering of independent, sophisticated intelligence, a testament to the innate human capacity for deep observation and symbolic thought. Before we can fully appreciate the intellectual system that made all this possible, we must first understand the profound mindset that saw the entire universe as an interconnected, living whole. The stones themselves could not speak, so the knowledge of how to read them had to live in human memory. In a world before books were common, the most sophisticated science of the age did not reside in libraries, but in the minds and voices of a select few. This was the realm of oral tradition, a living library where complex astronomical data was not written down but sung, chanted, and recited in stories passed meticulously from teacher to apprentice across generations. This was not casual folklore, it was a rigorous, disciplined system of preservation. A priest or shaman would spend a lifetime memorizing the precise order of rituals, the names of stars at specific horizon points, and the intricate timings of celestial cycles. These rituals themselves were more than ceremonies. They were mnemonic devices, physical performances that helped encode abstract data about the 18.6-year lunar cycle or the slow precession of the stars into the very muscle memory of the community. A particular song might detail the correct placement of a marker stone by describing a myth where a hero chased a stag to a certain hill at a specific phase of the moon. The story carried the technical instruction within it, wrapped in a narrative that made it unforgettable. This knowledge was often esoteric, meaning it was secret, reserved for a trained elite who served as the sole intermediaries between the people and the powerful forces of the cosmos. They were the keepers of the calendar, the interpreters of omens, and the master architects who could translate celestial patterns into terrestrial geometry. This system of secret knowledge solves a practical piece of the alignment paradox. It explains how a culture could achieve and then maintain such impossible precision over centuries, even as kings and chieftains came and went. The architectural techniques were not public property. They were a sacred trust, a cumulative wisdom refined over lifetimes and carefully guarded against loss or corruption. An apprentice might spend 20 years learning just one aspect of the craft, perhaps the art of using a simple rope to lay out a perfect Pythagorean triangle on the ground, before being entrusted with the full meaning of the alignment. This insular tradition, however, also explains why the full meaning of so many monuments remains tantalizingly obscure to us today. The knowledge was never meant to be read from the stones alone. The stones were merely the permanent anchor. The true manual, the living explanation, was in the songs and stories that accompanied them. When that unbroken chain of oral transmission was finally severed, whether by conquest, cultural collapse, or the simple passage of too much time, the key to the cipher was lost forever. We are left with the magnificent lock, the precisely aligned stones, but the detailed combination that once opened its meaning has faded into silence. This loss is profound, yet it also highlights the incredible fragility and strength of human knowledge. It forces us to wonder, what other profound understandings of the natural world have vanished not for lack of intelligence, but simply because the last person who remembered the song did not get to sing it to the next generation. The sky itself is not a fixed clock but a slow, drifting one. Our planet spins with a gentle wobble, like a top beginning to lose its momentum, completing one full wobble every 26,000 years. Astronomers call this the Procession of the Equinoxes. Its effect is profound yet almost imperceptible within a human lifetime. It means the entire celestial North Pole slowly traces a great circle among the stars. The star we call Polaris, our steadfast North Star, has not always held that position. 4,000 years ago, the honor belonged to a star in the constellation Draco named Thuban. In another few thousand years, it will be the brilliant Vega. This cosmic drift presents us with one of the greatest challenges in deciphering ancient monuments. A temple perfectly aligned to a specific star's rising point in the year 3000 BC would appear completely misaligned to that same star today. The builders were aiming at a moving target across millennia, and they seem to have accounted for it. This realization has led some researchers, like the historian of science Giorgio de Santillana, down a fascinating path. They propose that this grand 26,000-year cycle was not unknown to the ancients. They suggest its knowledge was preserved not in mathematical equations, but woven into the very fabric of global mythology. Stories of a world age ending in flood or fire, of a great mill turning the heavens, or of a serpent or dragon guarding the pole of the sky, are reinterpreted as metaphorical codes for precession. The idea is that ancient astronomers understood the sky was slowly changing over vast epochs, and they embedded this understanding into stories meant to last. This adds a staggering new dimension to the alignment paradox. It forces us to ask a breathtaking question. Did these cultures build their monuments not just as calendars for their own agricultural year, or as temples for their contemporary gods, but as permanent markers for this vast cosmic clock? Were they attempting to leave a message in stone that would only make complete sense to a future civilization, one that could look back and see the shift they had predicted. Some see in this a warning, a mythic encoding of cyclical cosmic change, where great ages of the world begin and end with the slow turning of the starry wheel. Whether one accepts the full mythological interpretation or not, the physical fact of procession is undeniable. It means that to truly hear what the stones are saying, we must learn to wind back the celestial clock, to reconstruct not just the landscape of the earth as it was, but the precise map of the heavens as they saw it. Only then can we begin to grasp the full scale of their ambition, an ambition that seems to reach across time itself, tying the fate of humanity to the patient, drifting dance of the stars. The silent stones may have held a secret language of sound. Beyond the visual alignment of light and star, researchers are uncovering a hidden layer to these ancient sites, a dimension of sacred architecture designed not just for the eyes but for the ears. Deep beneath the island of Malta lies the hypogeum of Hal Saflieni, a labyrinthine underground temple carved from solid rock over 5,000 years ago. Within its central chamber, known as the Oracle Room, something extraordinary happens. A deep male voice speaking at a certain pitch can produce a powerful, reverberating echo that seems to fill the entire complex, a resonance that some studies suggest could induce altered states of awareness. This was no accident of geology. The chamber appears to have been intentionally carved and shaped to amplify specific sound frequencies, turning the space itself into a kind of ritual instrument. A similar phenomenon is observed at the Mayan pyramid of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza. Stand at the base of its grand staircase and clap your hands. The echo that returns is not a simple repetition, but the distinct chirping cry of the sacred Quetzal bird, an animal deeply associated with the feathered serpent deity for whom the pyramid is named. These are not isolated curiosities, but clues to a forgotten science of sacred sound. This discovery introduces a breathtaking, multisensory dimension to the alignment paradox. What if these monuments were designed as holistic sensory experiences? What if the goal was not merely to see the celestial event, but to hear it, to feel its vibration in your very bones? This idea connects directly to an ancient philosophical concept, the harmony of the spheres. Pioneered by thinkers like Pythagoras centuries later, this was the belief that each planet in its orbit produced a unique musical note, a hum determined by its speed and distance from Earth. Together, these planetary tones created a celestial symphony, a perfect music of cosmic order that human ears could not normally perceive. Perhaps then, the architects of the hypogeum or the Mayan pyramids were attempting something profound. They may have been trying to build chambers tuned to specific, sacred frequencies, frequencies they believed resonated with those distant planetary vibrations. By chanting or playing instruments within these acoustically engineered spaces, priests or participants could literally align their ritual with the perceived music of the cosmos. The architecture becomes a resonator, a device for harmonizing human ceremony with divine frequency. This transforms our understanding of alignment from a purely visual, geometric exercise into a full-bodied, experiential one. Light, sound, and stone were woven together into a unified sacred technology. The solstice sunrise flooding a chamber would be accompanied by a chant that made the very walls hum, creating a moment where sight and sound merged into a single, overwhelming encounter with the ordered universe. The monument was no longer just a clock or a calendar. It was an instrument for conducting the symphony of the stars, a place where heaven was not only observed but heard. That quest for cosmic harmony, once sung in stone and ritual, found a new home in the quiet scriptoria of medieval monasteries. While the gods had changed, the fundamental human drive to map the heavens and mirror their order did not vanish with the ancient world. It was preserved, translated, and transformed. Medieval scholars, working firmly within a Christian worldview, became the unexpected custodians of a far older tradition. They pored over classical texts on astronomy and geometry that had survived the collapse of Rome, often finding them not in Greek or Latin, but in Arabic translations from the Islamic Golden Age. When these works, like Ptolemy's Almagest, finally made their way back into Latin Europe, they ignited a scholarly revolution. This was not a rejection of faith, but an expansion of it, for to study the heavens was to study the handiwork of the divine architect. A figure like the Venerable Bede, an English monk of the 8th century, exemplifies this synthesis. He wrote profound treatises on timekeeping and the complex calculation of the date of Easter, known as the Computus. Determining Easter required a deep understanding of the lunar cycle and the solar year, a practical astronomical problem with immense spiritual significance. His work, and that of countless anonymous monks who tracked star positions and planetary movements from their cloisters, created a continuous thread of celestial observation. Monastic communities effectively functioned as the early medieval world's research centers for astronomy, their meticulous chronicles of comets and eclipses providing a vital bridge across the centuries. This fragile but persistent continuity of knowledge meant the medieval mind inherited the ancient impulse to seek order in the cosmos and reflect it on Earth. The master masons who designed the soaring Gothic cathedrals were, in a very real sense, the direct heirs to the builders of pyramids and stone circles. They applied updated theological meanings to an ancient architectural practice. Where a Neolithic shaman might have aligned a tomb to the winter solstice sun to ensure rebirth, a medieval bishop aligned his cathedral's high altar to the dawn of the equinox, celebrating the light of Christ illuminating the world. The tools were more advanced, the geometry more refined, and the symbolic language was now that of saints and scripture, but the core principle remained stunningly consistent. Build a sacred space that resonates with the perceived harmony of creation. This grand tradition of seeking earthly reflection of celestial order, stretching unbroken from prehistory through the Middle Ages, was about to meet a force that would challenge its very foundation. A new way of seeing the universe was emerging from the workshops and libraries of Europe, one that would not seek to align with the heavens, but to measure and master them. The alignment of stone to star, born from a vision of a living, sacred cosmos, faced an imminent and dramatic rupture, the dawn of the modern scientific age. The profound rupture arrived with the ticking of a new kind of clock. The scientific revolution of the 16th and 17th centuries did not merely introduce better tools for observing the cosmos. It fundamentally rewired how humanity perceived its place within it. Thinkers like Copernicus, Galileo, and Newton unveiled a universe governed by immutable physical laws, a vast and magnificent machine operating with mathematical precision. This was a monumental intellectual achievement, but it came with a profound, unintended consequence. It initiated a great divorce between the objective and the subjective, between the measurable world of science and the meaningful world of spirit. The cosmos was no longer a living, conscious entity speaking in symbols. It was a clockwork mechanism to be disassembled and understood. This is the birthplace of our modern perception of the so-called paradox. We look at Stonehenge and instinctively ask, was it a scientific observatory or a religious temple? We force an either-or choice that the builders themselves would not have recognized. Our compartmentalized worldview, which neatly separates astronomy from theology, engineering from ritual, creates the illusion of a contradiction where none originally existed. For the Neolithic priest, tracking the solstice sunrise with a gnomon was a single, seamless act. It was a scientific measurement that confirmed a divine promise, a technical skill that fulfilled a social duty. The precision was not in spite of the spirituality, it was its ultimate expression. The Enlightenment enshrined this split, championing rational empiricism as the only valid path to truth, and often dismissing symbolic, mythic, or intuitive ways of knowing as primitive superstition. This bias still colors our interpretation of history. We marvel at the engineering of the pyramids while quietly dismissing the mythological purpose of aligning them with Orion as mere storybook fantasy. But in doing so, we amputate the very soul of the project. We are left admiring the lifeless body of the achievement without understanding the breath that animated it. The paradox, therefore, is largely a mirror. It reveals our own modern difficulty in holding multiple truths together at once. We struggle to conceive of a mindset where a deeply held belief in celestial gods did not hinder scientific observation, but actively motivated and refined it. Where the quest for accurate prediction was driven by a desire to commune with the divine, not to conquer it, to label their achievements an inexplicable mystery is to project our own intellectual limitations onto them. It assumes that because we have separated these domains, they must have as well, but the stones tell a different story. They testify to a unified consciousness, one that saw number and narrative, angle and angel as part of a single sacred whole. Resolving the alignment paradox, then, is not an archaeological puzzle to be solved with better data alone. It is an exercise in historical empathy. It requires us to temporarily set aside our categories and attempt to see the sky once again as they did, not as a cold vacuum dotted with nuclear furnaces, but as a living, storied canopy, intimately connected to the fate of the community huddled beneath it. This daunting task of reintegration is precisely where the most fascinating frontier of research lies today, as scholars from disparate fields begin to collaborate, weaving together threads we have kept apart for centuries. The great divorce between science and spirit left us with a fractured lens for viewing the past. To truly see these monuments whole again, we need a new kind of vision, one that can stitch the measurable and the meaningful back together. This is where our modern tools enter the story, not as a means to dismiss ancient wisdom, but as a way to listen to it with unprecedented clarity. High above the dense jungles of Central America, a technology called LIDAR, which stands for light detection and ranging, is performing a kind of digital archaeology. By firing millions of laser pulses from an aircraft, it can create a detailed three-dimensional map of the ground surface, digitally stripping away the thick canopy of trees to reveal the landscape beneath. What emerges are not just lost pyramids, but entire hidden cities, road networks, and water management systems laid out on a scale previously unimaginable. More importantly for our mystery, LIDAR reveals the grand geometric patterns of these sites, their precise orientations and relationships to each other and to the horizon. It shows us that what we once thought was a solitary temple in a clearing was actually the central node in a vast, intentionally aligned ceremonial landscape. This technology acts as a time machine for the eyes, restoring the original canvas upon which the ancient architects plotted their celestial designs. From orbit, satellite imagery provides another powerful perspective. By analyzing the reflectance of the Earth across different light spectra, researchers can detect subtle variations in soil and vegetation that hint at buried walls, plazas, and processional avenues. These tools allow for the precise measurement of alignments across vast distances, confirming, for instance, that the causeway leading from the Pyramid of the Moon at Teotihuacan points directly to the setting of the Pleiades star cluster on a key date in the Mesoamerican calendar. Once these alignments are identified, sophisticated 3D modeling software can wind back the celestial clock. Astronomers can input the exact latitude, longitude, and altitude of a site, then calculate with pinpoint accuracy where every star, planet, the sun, and the moon would have appeared on the horizon for any date in the past 5,000 years. This lets researchers test hypotheses with scientific rigor. Was this temple doorway aligned to the summer solstice sunrise in the year 800? The software can show us definitively the beam of light as it would have fallen across the threshold on that morning long ago. This marriage of technology and tradition defines the modern field of archaeoastronomy. It has matured from an era of speculative wonder into a disciplined science. Pioneering researchers like Clive Ruggles and Anthony Aveney have established rigorous methodologies. They use statistical analysis to distinguish between alignments that are likely intentional and those that could simply be random chance. If 1 out of 50 structures in a region points to a solstice sunrise, that might be coincidence. But if 40 out of 50 do, the pattern speaks of a clear cultural imperative. Crucially, these scholars insist on a holistic approach. They weave together threads from multiple disciplines, the hard data from astronomy and remote sensing, the physical evidence from archaeological excavation, and perhaps most vitally, the living wisdom from ethnographic studies of descendant communities. By understanding how contemporary indigenous cultures perceive the stars and relate them to myth, ritual, and landscape, researchers gain invaluable context for interpreting the silent stones of their ancestors. This approach reframes the question. It is no longer, is this alignment astronomically significant? It becomes, how did this alignment function within the entire cultural, spiritual, and practical life of the people who built it? The ultimate goal of these contemporary tools is not to reduce the paradox to a simple technical manual. It is the opposite. By revealing the staggering scale of the planning, the consistency of the alignments across continents, and the sheer intellectual investment, modern science is allowing us to appreciate the depth of ancient sophistication with a new humility. We are not explaining away the mystery, we are deepening it. We are coming to understand that the alignment was not a single clever trick, but the foundational principle of an entire worldview. The laser scan, the satellite image, and the statistical model are giving us the vocabulary to finally read a language we had forgotten. A language written not in words, but in the relationship between earth and sky. This journey of rediscovery, however, leads to a profound and unsettling modern question. In our world of electric light and digital abstraction, have we lost something essential that these cultures, in all their varied brilliance, inherently understood? Every compelling investigation must confront its own shadow of doubt. The field of archaeoastronomy has not been without its controversies, and to ignore them would be to tell only half the story. In the early 20th century, a wave of popular enthusiasm led to sweeping claims that sometimes outstripped the evidence. The concept of so-called ley lines, for instance, proposed invisible lines of mystical energy connecting ancient sites across the British landscape. While captivating, this idea often relied on selectively connecting dots on a map, ignoring sites that did not fit the pattern, and lacked any rigorous statistical or archaeological foundation. It drifted firmly into the realm of pseudoscience, and serious scholars rightly distanced themselves from such unfounded speculation. This history serves as a necessary cautionary tale, reminding us that the human desire to find patterns can sometimes create them where none exist. This leads us to the most potent argument from skeptics, the powerful role of random chance. Consider the night sky, a canvas with thousands of visible stars, and the earth below, dotted with tens of thousands of ancient monuments. If you draw enough lines between enough points, some of those lines will inevitably point to something significant in the sky, purely by statistical accident. A single alignment at one site can be intriguing, but it is not proof of intent. The critic's challenge is a vital one. How do we separate a genuine, culturally meaningful alignment from a mere coincidence of geography and astronomy? The answer lies in the painstaking work of establishing patterns and context. This is where the methodology of modern archaeoastronomy proves its worth. Researchers do not look for one-off curiosities, they search for repeated, statistically significant patterns. If one temple in a region faces the winter solstice sunrise, it could be chance. But if every major temple built by that culture over 300 years shares that same orientation, the probability of random chance plummets. Scholars use mathematical analysis to demonstrate that the clustering of alignments around specific celestial events is far beyond what randomness would produce. They look for internal consistency within a cultural sphere, where architectural manuals, mythic texts, and artifact iconography all reinforce the same celestial theme. The alignment must make sense within the broader tapestry of that society's known beliefs and practices. Furthermore, we must remain open to alternative explanations that are more grounded in earthly concerns. Not every long, straight avenue was built to frame a star. Some may simply follow the path of a ridgeline for practical construction reasons, or mirror the course of a sacred river below. A monument might be aligned not to a solstice sunrise, but to a much older, venerated site on a distant hilltop, creating a lineage of sacred geography where social and political meaning outweighs the astronomical. In some cases, an alignment might have been originally topographical or social, and only later generations interpreted it as having celestial significance, layering new meaning onto old stones. A truly robust investigation holds space for these possibilities, testing the astronomical hypothesis against other practical and social models. Engaging with these skeptical viewpoints does not weaken the mystery of celestial alignment, it refines and strengthens it. It forces the research to be better, more rigorous, and more interdisciplinary. By subjecting these ancient wonders to the toughest questions, we ensure that the alignments which survive this scrutiny are the most credible and awe-inspiring. We move from a landscape of vague mystery to one of specific, evidenced wonder. This rigorous filtering leaves us with a core of monuments whose connection to the cosmos is overwhelming in its consistency and cultural depth. And it is this hard-won credibility that makes the next question so profound. If these alignments are real and intentional, what does their precise, global repetition tell us about the human mind itself? That moment of perfect alignment was a profound psychological anchor. Imagine the entire community gathered in the pre-dawn chill within the stone circle. The air is thick with anticipation, with the smoke of sacred herbs, with the low murmur of chants passed down for generations. All eyes are fixed on the horizon notch between those two massive stones. Then the first sliver of golden light appears precisely on cue, and a beam of light shoots across the darkened earth to strike the central altar. In that instant, awe is not just a feeling, it is a communal experience, a physical confirmation of everything they believed. The universe had spoken back, it had followed the script for people living at the mercy of an unpredictable world, where a failed harvest or an outbreak of illness could mean hardship for all. This was more than a calendar event. It was a deep, psychological reassurance. The alignment proved that chaos was not the final word. Behind the terrifying storms and the mysterious cycles of life and loss, there was a pattern, a rhythm, an intelligible order. And they, through their observation and their architecture, were in conversation with it. This need to find order in chaos is a fundamental human drive. We see it in our own lives, in the comfort we take in routines, in the stories we tell to make sense of complex events. For ancient societies, this drive was a matter of cultural survival. By building monuments that mirrored the reliable cycles of the cosmos, they were constructing a bulwark against existential dread. They were writing their lives, their kings, their harvests, into a story much larger than themselves, a celestial narrative where the sun always returns, the stars always hold their places, and human ritual is a necessary part of maintaining that balance. This transforms our understanding of the monuments from tools or temples into something akin to psychological infrastructure. They were machines for generating meaning. The precision of the alignment did not just mark a date, it validated an entire worldview. It demonstrated that their priests, their knowledge, their traditions were correct. This validation fostered social cohesion, reinforcing the authority of the leaders who could orchestrate such a connection with the heavens. and giving every individual in the community a role within a grand cosmic drama. The alignment alleviated the anxiety of a random, indifferent universe by offering proof of a participatory one. This impulse is far from ancient history. We still seek transcendence and order, though we often look for it in different places in science, in philosophy, in art, or in personal spirituality. The quiet awe we might feel standing in a cathedral or gazing at a Hubble Space Telescope image is a direct descendant of that same human yearning. We still long to feel part of a story bigger than our own, to see our small lives reflected in something vast and beautiful and patterned. The ancient builders simply had the courage and the communal will to carve that yearning into the bedrock of their world. They turned their deepest psychological need for meaning into the most enduring art form of all, architecture that touches the sky. This profound human quest to build meaning inevitably leads us to wonder about the minds behind the monuments. What kind of person could hold such a grand vision? Our modern hunger for mystery has given the alignment paradox a vibrant and often sensational second life. You have likely encountered the idea in best-selling books, blockbuster films, or late-night television specials. From the provocative claims of Erich von Däniken, who suggested ancient monuments were built by visitors from other worlds, to the cryptic clues woven through stories like the Da Vinci Code, the notion that our ancestors possessed a lost, almost magical knowledge has become a staple of popular culture. These narratives thrive on the gaps in the historical record, filling them with thrilling tales of secret societies, extraterrestrial engineers, and global conspiracies. While these stories are gripping entertainment, they typically bypass the slow, meticulous work of archaeology and astronomy. They offer a seductive shortcut, an answer that feels grand and complete, solving the paradox with a single, spectacular revelation. The sheer popularity of these ideas, however, is incredibly telling. It is not merely a sign of gullibility, but a powerful indicator of a profound public longing. In a world where satellites map every inch of the globe and science can explain the physics of a star's birth, we still crave enigma. We yearn for the sense that history holds grand, untold secrets, that the world is more wondrous and connected than it appears on the surface. This cultural fascination underscores that the stones of Stonehenge or the pyramids of Giza tap into something deep within us, a desire for our past to be as epic and mysterious as the cosmos they mirror. For those of us who create content about these topics, this presents both an opportunity and a responsibility. The public's interest is a wide open door, but we must be careful guides on the other side. Our role is to navigate the exciting frontier between compelling evidence and captivating fiction. We can acknowledge the allure of the far-fetched theory, understanding why it resonates, while gently steering the conversation back to the even more astounding reality. The truth is, the verified alignments do not need aliens or global conspiracies to be breathtaking. The fact that human beings, through observation, patience, and generational effort, achieved such feats is arguably more inspiring. It speaks to the monumental capabilities of the human mind and spirit. By focusing on the rigorous work of researchers who use satellite data, 3D modeling, and statistical analysis, we do not drain the mystery from these sites. We deepen it. We replace a simplistic, external answer with a complex human story of ingenuity, belief, and profound connection to the universe. The enduring appeal of the alignment paradox, in both its scholarly and sensational forms, ultimately points to the same core human questions. How did we get here? What are we capable of? And are we alone in a vast universe, or are we, as those ancient builders believed, intimately woven into its very fabric? The stones ask these questions in a silent, enduring language. How we choose to answer them says as much about our own time as it does about the past. A monument's alignment is more than an angle on a surveyor's map. It is a thread in a living cultural tapestry, one that continues to hold profound meaning for descendant communities around the world. Our fascination with solving the alignment paradox must be tempered by a fundamental ethical consideration. These are not abandoned puzzles for outsiders to claim. They are often sacred spaces, active parts of a cultural landscape that stretches unbroken from the past into the present. A place like Mauna Kea in Hawaii is a powerful example. To astronomers, its summit offers some of the clearest views of the cosmos on Earth. But to native Hawaiians, Mauna Kea is a revered ancestor, the meeting place of Earth Mother and Sky Father, a region of immense spiritual significance. The construction of modern telescopes there has sparked deep and rightful concern, highlighting the clash between a scientific quest for knowledge and the preservation of a living sacred site. This tension asks us to reflect on our approach. Ethical engagement requires a shift in perspective. It means moving beyond seeing these sites as inert laboratories for our own research. It involves respecting access protocols established by cultural stewards, understanding that some knowledge is not meant for public dissemination, and, where possible, collaborating directly with indigenous knowledge holders. Their oral histories, songs, and traditional practices are not quaint folklore. They are the living manuals that can provide context no satellite image ever could. This collaborative spirit counters a colonial mindset, the idea that ancient monuments are a universal human heritage to be decoded by whoever has the most advanced technology. In reality, the deepest layers of meaning are often held by the communities for whom these places are not ancient history, but a continuing part of their identity and spiritual life. The alignment paradox, therefore, is not merely an intellectual challenge for archaeologists. It is an invitation to build a bridge of understanding between worldviews. Our exploration must be conducted with humility, acknowledging that we are visitors in a story that is not primarily ours. We may measure the precise azimuth of a solstice sunrise, but the full resonance of that light, the prayers it carried, the community it gathered, the promises it affirmed belongs to a cultural lineage. Recognizing this does not diminish the wonder of the achievement, it enriches it. It transforms our quest from one of extraction, of taking answers from the stones, to one of listening. We begin to hear the monuments not as silent riddles, but as voices in an ongoing conversation between a people and the cosmos they revered. This respectful posture ultimately leads us to a more profound question, one that moves beyond how they built these wonders, and asks what their enduring legacy means for us, here and now, in a world that has seemingly lost that direct celestial connection. The precise geometry these cultures mastered now faces a slow, creeping distortion. As our planet's climate shifts, the very ground upon which these monuments stand is becoming less stable. Rising sea levels threaten coastal sites, while increased rainfall and extreme weather events accelerate erosion, subtly altering the contours of ancient horizons. A stone that has stood for 5,000 years may not shift, but the hill it was aligned with can wear away, or the soil beneath its foundation can become saturated and unsettle. Over decades, these minute changes can cumulatively misalign a sightline that has been true since the Bronze Age. The cosmic clockwork they so carefully mirrored is now being disrupted by changes in the earthly frame that holds it. This is a race against a new kind of time, one measured not in star cycles, but in centimeters of sea level rise and the increasing frequency of storms. The challenge is to preserve not just the stones themselves, but the precise spatial relationships between them and the distant landscape features that gave them meaning. If the viewing point shifts even a small amount, the celestial event they were built to capture might vanish from view forever, severing a connection that has lasted for millennia. Beyond the Earth, the sky they mirrored is also fading from view. For the majority of people on the planet now, the true spectacle of the Milky Way is invisible, washed out by the perpetual glow of streetlights, buildings, and vehicles. Light pollution doesn't just hinder modern astronomy, it actively erases the context for ancient astronomy. You cannot understand the profound impact of seeing Venus blaze over a specific temple doorway if you have never seen a truly dark, star-filled sky. The monuments become silent puzzles in a well-lit room, their most vital reference point obscured. This creates a poignant irony. Our technological civilization, which can model these alignments with supercomputers, is simultaneously making it impossible to experience them with the naked eye, the very tool the builders used. Future research, therefore, carries a dual mandate. It must continue to use advanced technology like LIDAR and satellite monitoring to document and protect the physical sites from environmental threats. But it must also expand its advocacy to include the protection of dark sky preserves. This is about safeguarding a cultural heritage as real as the stones themselves, the heritage of a human relationship with the night. Organizations like the International Dark Sky Association work to designate areas where natural night darkness is protected, allowing both ecological health and cultural continuity to thrive. This work reframes the alignment paradox for the 21st century. It presents us with a new alignment challenge of our own. Can we align our modern priorities for development and energy use with the preservation of ancient cosmic wisdom? Can we value darkness as a resource, not as a void to be filled? The efforts of archaeologists, environmental scientists, and community activists today will write the next chapter in this long story. They are fighting to ensure that a child 100 years from now can still stand in the heart of a stone circle and, looking up at a sky ablaze with stars, feel the same awe and witness the same precise alignment as the people who built it. Their success or failure will determine whether these monuments remain dynamic bridges to the cosmos or become merely beautiful ruins under a blank, forgetful sky. The paradox begins to fade when we release our own definitions of progress. We have long measured advancement by the presence of certain tools, by metallurgy, by written language, by mechanical invention. But what if the most profound technology is not held in the hand, but cultivated in the mind and heart across centuries? The builders of these monuments possessed a mastery of a different order. Their advancement was one of attention, of seeing the world not as a collection of resources to be used, but as a sacred text to be read. Their greatest innovation was not a lever or a wheel, though they used both. It was a cultural commitment to watching the sky with such devotion that its patterns became the blueprint for their world. They achieved precision not in spite of their worldview, but because of it. For them, the meticulous tracking of a star's path was an act of piety, a scientific observation that was simultaneously a prayer. The line between the observatory and the temple did not exist. This holistic integration of knowledge is what we have since fragmented. We separate astronomy from religion, engineering from art, and individual genius from communal tradition. They wove these threads together into a single, unbreakable cord. The monument was the physical knot where all those strands met. It was an astronomical instrument that told the time, a work of art that inspired awe, a religious icon that housed the divine, and a social project that unified the labor of generations. To call this a paradox is to mistake a symphony for a cacophony, simply because we have forgotten how to listen to all the instruments at once. Their tools were elegantly suited to their purpose, the human eye trained by a lifetime of watching, the mythic story that encoded complex data in a memorable narrative, the simple rope and stake that could translate cosmic angles into earthly foundations, and above all, the patient passage of time itself, treated not as an enemy but as the most essential collaborator. A society that plans for a celestial event that will not be complete for 18 years is not primitive, it is profoundly future-oriented. It thinks in terms of legacy, not just livelihood. So the stones of Callanish or the shafts of the Great Pyramid are not anomalies in human history. They are its pinnacles, They stand as ultimate proof of a uniquely human aspiration to locate our small, fleeting lives within a story of majestic, eternal scale. We have always sought to map our inner landscape of hope, fear, and wonder onto the vast canvas of the universe. We yearn to find our rhythm in the grand dance of the cosmos, to feel that our ceremonies and seasons are not arbitrary, but are echoes of a celestial order. These monuments are the material expression of that yearning. They are anchors in the stream of time, placed there to say, we were here, we watched, we understood our part in the great turning. They remind us that true sophistication is not merely about manipulating the world, but about comprehending our place within it, a lesson etched in alignment, waiting for any era to rediscover. The same constellations that guided them still shine for us tonight. As the stars wheel in their silent, ancient patterns, they cast their light on a world transformed. Yet the stones remain, holding their alignments like frozen prayers, asking us to reconsider the story of human progress. The alignment paradox is not a puzzle to be solved so much as a perspective to be adopted. It teaches us that the builders of these wonders were not primitive people clinging to superstition. They were the keenest intellectuals of their age, master observers, who married rigorous attention to a profound spiritual yearning. They were seekers looking for meaning in the movement of lights across the void, and they left a permanent record of their cosmic understanding not in books, but in the very bones of the earth itself. Their legacy is a challenge etched in granite and limestone. It asks us to look up from our screens more often, to let our eyes adjust to the natural dark, and to seek connections, not just between stars and stones, but between our modern minds and their holistic vision. It invites us to appreciate the profound ingenuity embedded in these places, an ingenuity born of patience, community, and a deep desire to belong to a universe full of meaning. Their greatest gift may be the reminder that wonder is a choice, and that the sky is still there, waiting for anyone who wishes to read its old, familiar story. If this journey through time and sky resonated with you, consider subscribing for more explorations into the heart of historical mysteries. Let us know in the comments below which ancient monument's alignment captures your imagination the most. The great conversation between earth and sky never truly ended. By listening to it, you become part of its next unfolding chapter.